Well, guys, I don't know how I didn't hear about this until today, because you guys failed me on this one. Like, I'm glad I eventually found out, but man, the fact that you guys didn't tell me has left me immensely disappointed, because we're 6 days late to this. Regardless, though, I'm still talking about it, and I'm still watching it, because when I found out this happened, I had to keep myself from watching it right then and there. I had to save it for on stream, but here we are, and I can finally show you guys and see for myself what I have to watch with you guys. Tim Pool and Adam Conover from Adam Ruins Everything. He's known for being a bit obnoxious, but also a very well-informed and well-meaning guy. Ended up debating Tim Pool, and according to the right, Tim Pool destroyed Adam Conover. According to the left, Adam Conover destroyed Tim Pool. But I don't know how this went. I don't know if it went good for our side or well for their side, but for those that don't know, Tim Pool is, I believe, the largest political pundit on YouTube. I might be wrong. Across all of his channels, I think he has by far the most subscribers and is the most viewed. And on top of that, the DOJ revealed last year that he was paid upwards of, I think, $400K by the Russian government to push pro-Trump propaganda in his videos. I think it was like $100K per video or something like that. And he got 4 out before the DOJ investigated and outed it. But that is the guy. That is the dude. You know, he is a literal Russian puppet, and he is one of the loudest and most popular voices for politics on YouTube. Maybe the most popular, if I'm not mistaken. Really goes to show where the internet is right now. But thankfully, Adam Conover, who I think stands a pretty good chance of winning a debate against a guy like this, came in to, go after his points. Now, Tim Pool has a very unique way of arguing when it comes to conservatives. Unlike most, Tim Pool is actually fairly well informed, though not on really any facts or statistics that back up his worldview. There are very few that do, if any. More so on anecdotes. The right-wing rhetoric storm relies heavily on anecdotal stories that are pushed heavily into the mainstream and made to go viral, and then used as examples to make arguments, right? If they want to make an argument for how minorities are making up racism in America, they'll point to Jussie Smollett, right? If they want to point to an instance of immigrants murdering white people in America, they'll point to that. I forget what her name was, but that lady who was murdered by like an illegal immigrant shortly before the election, that was like a big wedge issue during the election season. Or hell, even Peanut the squirrel will be used as an example. They do a really good job of Lake and Riley, yeah. They do a really good job of pushing their rhetoric through anecdotal stories that evoke strong emotion, because emotion matters way more to people than stats, numbers, and facts. It just does. Like, conservatives are heavily emotional. Frankly, everyone is. Conservatives are they're no exception to that. In fact, they fall into it more often than the left does, I've found. And so critically, the way that Tim Pool argues is especially effective. While most of these right-wing pundits and demagogues just kind of pump out their slop talking about a given thing and forget about it, move on to the next thing, Tim Pool might be a true believer, even if he is a grifter taking money to push like pro-Trump stuff. He might be a true believer. He commits these anecdotal stories to memory, or more likely than not catalogs them in probably like a document somewhere, where if he needs to like immediately pull an anecdote out to use in an argument, he does. You know, his whole thing is just covering these anecdotal stories as if they're breaking news day after day. And so if he needs to use an anecdote to make a point, he's got a million. And if he wants to bring up a situation where he thinks something happened that proves his point right, he will outmaneuver you on the facts of the situation. Many of them might be made up facts, but if you're not able to fact check him and call him out on his bullshit right then and there with sources, he's gonna basically run circles around you. Tim Pool is actually a very effective debater on the right, and I'm very curious to see how Adam Conover handles him. Let's find out. Not gonna be able to watch all of it, of course, but we'll get a good chunk taken out of it.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Culture War. We got a special episode today. It's not necessarily about a core issue. It's we're being joined by Adam Conover.
Hey, thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming, man. Who are you? What do you do?
I'm a comedian. I've made a couple television shows in the past. Did a true TV show, did a Netflix show. I'm a stand-up comic. I'm going to be in Charleston, South Carolina this weekend, and you guys invited me. Thought I'd swing by.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
You had what year was that show? Adam Ruins Everything.
It first came out in 2015, I think, and ran until 2019. We did like 4 or 5 cycles of it.
My mom loved your show.
Oh.
And I think she watched regularly. I watched a handful, to be honest. I'm not gonna.
That's fine.
But you did have one really good one on gun control that I thought was good because you pointed out Reagan was the start of gun control. And you had probably one of the most, I think, honest portrayals when you had a Black Panther and like a white rural fat guy both being like, yes, guns.
Yeah.
Because we often see this depiction where it's like racists are mad, they lump all 2A people in with like all white supremacists or whatever.
Yeah.
What did he just say?
Because we often see this depiction where it's like racists are mad,
I think he had a bit of a Freudian slip there. Shit. No, I do think that Adam Conover's gun control video is really good. And it's because it's from the perspective of like the liberal snooty guy who ruins the gun control issue for liberals. Because liberals are very like, on guns in particular, cringe as fuck, uptight, and undereducated as fuck when it comes to guns. Many of you, I've gotten shit from my own chat before, because a lot of you guys might be like European or from places where there aren't a lot of guns, and you'll hear a lot of takes, and it's like, I have a hard time taking anti-gun opinions seriously from someone who doesn't know the basics of what guns can and can't do, right? When I see those viral clips of like news broadcasters thinking that AR-15s shoot full auto like by default, or they can shoot 30 rounds in a second or something like that, it's like, no, like, you fundamentally don't understand what these objective pieces of metal and plastic are capable of. You are not a good source of rhetoric or morality on this issue. You know what I mean? It's like, I am what one might say a bit more conservative on gun issues. In fact, my shirt literally has the American flag on it and says "Defend the Second." Defend the Second. I'm a little bit of a gun guy, believe it or not. I'm a little bit of a, you might say, conservative on that issue, though I'd argue libertarian. But you know, it is what it is.
Gun, like they lump all 2A people in with like all white supremacists or whatever, and they try and act like conservatives are mad that black people have guns, and it's like the 2A guys are not racist. It's a totally different ideology.
Well, yeah, we made the point in that video though that those people tend not to defend like black people who are the Philandos Castile case, right, was one of the ones that we talked about. But that's comes
that actually was a really interesting case too, because there were a lot of people on the right. For people who don't know, this is the guy got pulled over. I think he was smoking weed. He had a gun. He didn't draw it or anything, but the cop just shot and killed him.
I believe what happened, this was so many years ago, and I've done so many things that like my memory for stuff like this isn't as good as it used to be, but I believe he said, like, officer, I have a firearm, and, which is what you're supposed to do, and the officer shot him, I think, at that point.
Yeah, like, he didn't draw it or anything.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see the rift between...
He, like, had it stored in the car properly.
Yeah. And then a lot of conservatives were like, yeah, well, you shouldn't have been smoking weed. And I'm like, whoa. Like, yes, but you don't die because you're armed. You have a right to keep and bear arms. So that was an interesting contrast. But anyway, that was, you got a lot of praise from that from the pro-2A people, because they were like, hey, this guy's, he's being honest. It's like, there are pro-2A people. They're not all going to be racist, white supremacists or whatever. But anyway, I digress. I'm curious.
Yeah,
I can ask you something simple first. Like, what are you currently working on?
Currently, everything I'm doing is like podcast YouTube, right?
Yeah, Tim. We know not all American gun owners are racist. There'd be a lot of fucking racists if that were true. And there are a lot of racists, but not that many.
Like mainstream entertainment industry kind of stopped making the kind of comedy I make, and so YouTube has like replaced television for so many people. It's the #1 streaming app on televisions. Their top format is television sets, and so that's where I've moved all my shit. And so yeah, I do kind of similar stuff to what I used to do on cable, doing it on YouTube on a weekly basis. And I'm a touring comic.
Right on. Well, let's jump into the current state of affairs. We've got a second Trump administration, non-consecutive. What's your take on what is currently happening politically and culturally?
Damn.
Massive pendulum shifts.
You're going to disagree. Your audience is going to disagree. That's
the point, right?
It's hard. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to Tim Pool destroys woke comedian. It's fine. You can start the clip at this point if you're.
Actual Justice Warrior, the right-wing YouTuber, made that video. By the way, that does exist. I actually met that guy in real life. I debated him on a panel at like a like hotel debate event hosted by Modern Day Debate a few years back, and I think I kind of crushed him. That was the consensus on the video. At one point, I argued very meta with him, more or less, right? Like, instead of trying to, like, get lost in the weeds on why he wanted, like, on whether or not, like, wealthy black people commit more crime than poor white people or whatever, I asked him, why do you want to prove that point? I'm just curious, like, what is the point you're trying to make when you claim that poor black or wealthy black people commit more crime than wealthy white people? Why do you think that is? And he was just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And I just said, no. Like, you're really strongly attached to that idea. Let's say that's true. Why do you think that is? Surely, if you're so strongly attached to that being true, you have thought about it a little bit. Maybe you have some theories as to why that's true. Why you think black people who are wealthy commit more crime than poor white people. Like, there must be some sort of explanation for a trend like that. Is there something about... Do you have any theories maybe about how about black people maybe? I like pushed him on that and he started to get kind of awkward. That was probably my favorite moment of debating ever. Like, genuinely like burned into my mind as like a great moment, because I've never gotten to debate an internet person in person like that and look them in the eye as I call them on their bullshit and see them get nervous visually in their face because they're trying to like come up with a like response. They're trying to figure out their next move in the chess game that is a debate, especially because it's public in front of a crowd of people. So it's like extra pressure. Oh, I'm proud of myself for that one.
If you're doing your response videos, yeah, I mean, it looks like a pretty clear fascist authoritarian takeover of the U.S. government. It's we got people being thrown into unmarked vans. We got like the destruction of the civil service, which is like a pretty standard authoritarian tactic, like early on in a administration of that type. Yeah, it's like sort of remains to be seen how far they'll get and if they'll actually be able to transform America in the ways that they're trying to. But yeah, it's pretty. My side of America, people are a little on edge. It's a little frightening to folks.
Yeah, my take on that would be largely because corporate press is lying to them, largely. And
what corporate press? There's no corporate press left, hardly.
Well,
please God, bring up the fact that the DOJ outed Tim Pool for taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Russian government to push his propaganda. Like, what is the like self-made, non-mainstream alt media more reputable? Mr. took $400,000 from Russia.
I would say their viewership is rapidly diminished.
Yeah.
But still, when you look at, there was a Real Clear Politics aggregate polling found that they didn't do it necessarily by demographic. They did it by decade age bracket. So it was like 20 to 29 or whatever. Every age group except for 70 plus was pro-Trump. Was a few points above.
Real Clear Politics did an average, and they said that every age group in
Except
America,
for 70 plus.
Every age group except for 70 plus is pro-Trump.
Yeah, let me see if I can try and find it.
That is not what he's referring to, and I guarantee you the stat that he's going to end up pulling up is actually that compared to 2020, every age group except for 70 and up saw an increase of some amount in favorability towards Trump, or the rate of voting for Trump. Not that they are all more in favor of Trump or fully in favor of Trump in a majority, but that there was an increase in all those age groups, which I do not doubt in any way.
And this is contrasting to like all the approval rating stats I've seen have him at like 47% and dropping or something that.
It's largely based on the older crowd.
Just old. That seems like the opposite of every stat I've seen in the past. But I don't like follow this really closely.
Yeah. I don't know how to find this image because it was a few weeks ago, but let me see if I can.
Oh, fuck. You got to be able to call him on his bullshit. He's going to try and wiggle out of being able to pull up a source on this now. If he's finding any sources, it's going to be the fact, and I do believe this is true, that every age group, maybe including 70 and up, I don't know if it's true that 70 and up are not more favorable of Trump. Maybe they already were just maximally favorable towards Trump at that point, where you just can't teach an old dog new tricks. They're locked where they are. But yeah, like every age group across the board has seen an uptick in support for Trump, but not a majority of support for Trump.
and try and pull it up and talk at the same time, which I probably can't. But I don't actually. Do you want to see if you can try and find it while we talk? Otherwise, I'm going to be sitting here typing.
No problem.
Out of my mind. Yeah. So what I would say is like the obvious story we debated this last week live is the Abrego Garcia story.
Yeah.
And so the take that I've typically seen from liberals is actually I'll use a specific example. The David Pakman subreddit. Pakman, of course, has millions of followers. He gets 100 million views per month, and his audience.
Bro, that's literally nothing compared to you. I mean, maybe is David Pakman that big compared to Tim Pool? Maybe now. I don't know how big of a hit Tim Pool took from the Russia stuff coming out, but like, it seems like Tim's salty. I'm not gonna lie.
On Reddit was saying, this is just a family man who is trying to escape harsh conditions in Central America, who has been.
Yes, one of Tim Pool's fans on Reddit said this. How damning.
Effectively disappeared by the Trump administration.
They do this every time a minority is victimized in a way that is like clearly racially motivated and people are outraged about it. They try to say, oh, so you're claiming they were an angel, a perfect person who did no wrong and was literally kissing babies and delivering meals to homeless people every day. Well, in reality, they weren't such a good guy. You know, there's some questionable things they've done. And yet you're out here claiming we should feel bad for them because they're this holier-than-thou angel. They love to create this fallacious straw man of what people are claiming. It's like, no, it doesn't matter if this guy was a drug addict or if this guy had previous criminal convictions or whatever, when in this specific case it is extremely obvious that they were victimized due to their race. Yes, it should be called out. No, they don't need to be a perfect angel for that to be warranted. This is a very common strategy they use. Of course they're using it on Abrego Garcia.
Which is a gross mischaracterization of what happened. If we were to say that a judge granted Abrego Garcia withholding of deportation due to Barrios 18 in Guatemala and threats against his life in El Salvador, then the question of due process is he needed to get a hearing as pertaining to that withholding of deportation, but he did already have two hearings in which he was determined to be an MS-13 gang member. He was pulled over and law enforcement believed to be human trafficking. He has 2 filings from his wife for beating her. She was filing orders of protection.
Completely irrelevant. We have due process in this country for a reason. It doesn't matter how heinous the crime is. It doesn't matter who did it. We have due process in this country. There was a court order. The court demanded he not be deported. He was literally here to be held accountable for his crimes that he presumably committed here. This is not how the legal system works, and our legal system was set up by our founding fathers to be as fair as the free world had, more free than the free world had at that time, and freer than most of the world today, and Trump is eroding that, clearly. You were paid by Russia to push this propaganda. We know it now. I'm not even going to pretend like it's anything else.
And so it's fine if, in my view, the liberal side of things, or the, podcasters like Pakman and Brian Tyler Cohen and others are going to say, hey, he was supposed to get a hearing. Agreed. But it is a gross mischaracterization. So when you mention that, people on the left are on edge, I'm like, yeah, well, they think that a guy who lives in Maryland.
Once again, he's creating the false narrative right now. Everyone's saying he should have gotten due process. Tim Pool's trying to claim, well, yeah, if that's all they were saying, then it wouldn't be a problem. But they're trying to claim he was this angel. No. There's always going to be someone out there doing some shit like that. But no, the broader discussion is not about how he was such an angel and he didn't deserve this. It's that no one deserves this because conceptually overriding the due process of the American legal system and going against the courts is bad.
Who was working like a regular union job or whatever, just disappeared one day, as opposed to a guy who had gone through several hearings, was arrested with MS-13, had symbols on his hand that law enforcement believe were MS-13 gang tattoos. And so
I'm going to be honest, if I ever went on Tim Pool's show, I would probably just go for the most aggressive strategy possible, poking holes in everything he says, cutting him off as often as possible, not letting him make a bullshit point. And if it means I got kicked off the show, I prefer that to just letting him trample over me with bullshit talking points. I think it looks better if he demands I leave, because I won't let him make his bullshit point and I keep cutting him off. If I got invited on to debate him, that's exactly what I'd do. I'd just be so aggressive in my debate strategy, he'd probably ask me to leave. And I'd happily leave because I'd consider that a pretty clear sign of victory.
Real question is, what was the error in that deportation? On the right, it's legally called harmless error in that he didn't get a hearing as to the withholding of deportation. However, he wouldn't have got it approved anyway. So the answer now is a formality. It's paperwork. It's a Zoom call, and then it's done. But people on the left, the liberal side of things, they think that this is a working class family guy who's vanished one night, an American citizen. And I think it was actually
They have done this to people, particularly that one child they did it to, that baby.
Well, people don't think he's an American citizen. I mean, they're up to speed on like.
Hassan Piker thought he was from Maryland. Legit, and so and we're talking, and I know it's not you, but this is.
I love that. That is more or less Adam Conover saying, yeah, and he's a retard, so?
Like the 7th biggest live streamer in the country. Almost every single day, Hassan gets 50K. And
yeah, I hate it too.
He actually
Tim.
said on his stream in response to the comments I made at the White House, what do you mean he's not from Maryland? Are you saying he's from D.C.? He's from Maryland. No, he's from El Salvador. He only lived in Maryland for a few years.
Okay, I mean that guy talks for 8 hours a day. Like you can parse any particular
for sure
statement, but like I mean that to me everything that you said. First of all, half of it sounds unrelated. like he's had past interaction with law enforcement, like domestic violence and stuff like that. To me that's like neither here nor there. It's like character stuff. I don't really give a shit about like the character of the guy, and I didn't think that was a big part of the story. It was like the fact that he did not receive due process before being rendered to a prison, like this bizarre prison in El Salvador. Like that's the strange part.
That's
right?
El Salvador's government with an El Salvadoran citizen. That's not our purview.
I mean, he's like sent directly to this like gigantic, complex. It's in a like highly public way.
Oh, of course, Ivory. Aggressive doesn't mean angry. Aggressive just means like assertive in making your point, right? Like if Tim tries to pull out a bullshit argument, don't let him even finish. Just say, oh, wait, Tim, listen, I don't care. I don't care about the anecdote you're about to make. I want to talk about the actual broad issue. I've got facts here. You want to like sway my emotions with an anecdote that has some sort of pull on my heartstrings, but I don't care. That doesn't matter to the broader situation. Like, you don't have to come off as angry or yelling to be aggressive in a debate. Being aggressive in a debate is just like basically getting your opponent stun locked in a combo, more or less. Like, you don't have, like, that's the idea of being aggressive. And I wish Adam Conover was doing it out the gate here, because there's a few opportunities he's had to get Tim locked in a combo stun lock of aggressive debate strategy, calling him out on his bullshit.
In a way where like the administration, is making a show of their refusal to, follow the law. It's bizarre to witness. And like, the sort of narrow legalistic, oh, he had a hearing, he was da-da-da-da-da. It's irrelevant to like the purposeful spectacle of the Trump administration, sending this guy who they admit they should not have done this, but they're like, we don't give a shit. We're doing it just because we hate guys like this, and we want like even people who are in the country legally to, be afraid and to self-deport. Like it seems like the only justification is purposeful cruelty for doing
I don't think they call on any legal immigrants to self-deport. They're calling on illegal immigrants.
Yes, they are. In fact, they're making an app for it
to self-deport, offering up $1,000 if they do.
The guy had a legal status to be in the country.
He did not.
Legally.
True.
This includes legal immigrants. They are offering money to self-deport.
Withholding of deportation isn't legal status. Withholding of deportation means he was ordered to leave the country, but the U.S. was barred from sending him to El Salvador, specifically because Barrios 18 in Guatemala had threatened his family. So the question as to due process was, this is why I think the actual legal standard is called harmless error. If he actually got either USCIS interview as to the withholding of deportation, it would.
He's doing that thing that I described at the start right now, by the way, where he gish gallops you with nonsense in order to like override the fundamental basics. This is the point where you have to cut him off and say, hey, I don't care. In America, you get due process. I don't care if he had a hearing. That's not the same as he didn't have his full due process. He didn't get his day in court, okay? A judge and a jury did not see this case. Like no. Dude, calm down. Tim, calm down. Calm down, buddy. Calm down. No. That's what Adam needs to do.
Been voided because El Salvador no longer has the crime rate that it did 12 years ago or 10 years ago. The issue is, are you still at threat from Barrios 18? The answer is no. And so then your withholding of deportation is void. We can deport you. The issue is that for deportation of someone like Rodrigo Garcia, he has a home country, El Salvador. He has a withholding to El Salvador, withholding of deportation because of a gang in another country neighboring El Salvador. We can't deport him to Venezuela. We can't deport him to Mexico. That requires treaties. The U.S. doesn't have those, though we do have a treaty with El Salvador as pertains to Tren de Aragua. So what ends up happening is he had 2 orders of deportation. He conceded in 2019 through his lawyer that yes, he was here illegally. Yes, he had been found to be here to be removed.
I love how like the people who play defense for Trump, the people who sanity wash for Trump, talk like this about his actions. Meanwhile, let's just take a quick look at how Trump talks about his actions. We need to watch this clip really fast. It's related to this, so I think it's a perfect example of like how much thought Trump actually puts into things like this compared to how much thought conservatives put into defending the stuff he does. Trump tattoo. God, this is one of my favorite, like, Trump retard moments. Oh, it's so fucking good.
I can't have a trial, a major trial for every person that came in illegally. We have thousands of murderers that came in. They're going to murder people. They already have murdered people in our country.
Right, so
we have to get them out, and we have to get them out fast.
Really bad guys, but in our country, even bad guys get due process, right?
If people come into our country illegally, there's a different standard. These are illegal. They
Does not
came
say that in the
illegally.
They get due
Constitution.
process.
Well, they get a process where we have to get them out. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Venezuelan.
They get a process.
They get whatever my lawyers say. Those tattoos.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the
do that.
letter MS13.
It says MS13.
Yeah, that was Photoshopped. So let me
That
just...
was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly...
So he immediately starts calling him a loser for standing his ground and almost attempting to hold Trump to account for a lie. Mind you, the image he's talking about where he claims you're a liar if you think he didn't literally have MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles. Let me just show you guys the image that he's referring to here really quick. Come on. Here it is. Here is the image where Trump unironically believes, I kid you not, he believes the MS and the 1-3 were tattooed on his knuckle. What this is supposed to be is labels that were added to the image in post, meant to label what each tattoo represented. It, like, the M is supposed to, the marijuana leaf is supposed to be M, the smiley face is supposed to be S, the cross is supposed to be 1, and the skull is supposed to be 3, right? That's their interpretation of what the tattoos mean. Maybe it's right, who knows? But Trump thinks that the Microsoft Paint, MS-13 on his knuckle was literally real. How is the skull 3? I don't know, man. Listen, don't ask me. Don't fucking ask me. Maybe because the skull has 3 of something. I don't know, man. It makes no fucking sense. Regardless, though, Trump thinks the MS-13 was real, and then insults the reporter for claiming that as it was, and everyone knows it was, that it was, like, not even Photoshop, but MS Paint. There was no MS-13. It was MS Paint, okay? So yeah. Oh man, that would have been so good for the thumbnail of the video about this. Like, the MS Paint logo with MS, but then 13 at the end. Like Microsoft Paint 13 or whatever. I don't know. Good, dude, can you hear my stomach rumbling right now? I am so fucking hungry. I'm sorry if you guys can hear my tummy just growling for food at the moment. I'm bulking, so my body's getting to the point now where if I haven't eaten a big pile of meat in like 4 hours, my stomach starts to scream at me.
Removable under the law, and he requested 3. There's withholding of deportation, there was asylum, and then there was I forgot the third one is it's you can't deport him because of fear of torture. It's like a UN thing, and they denied 2 of them. Asylum was denied because he didn't apply for it in a timely manner. Deportation to El Salvador was granted because of Barrios 18 in Guatemala, and then the last one was denied because there's no torture provision. The remedy right now would be a Zoom hearing where he gets on a computer, talks to these are executive judges, by the way, and they would just say, withholding denied. Welcome to El Salvador. You're an El Salvador citizen. I think the real issue is, yes, it was an administrative error.
You don't know that.
Shouldn't have happened. But the remedy is a 10-minute Zoom call. If we did that, nothing would change. If he was brought back to the United States, he'd immediately be turned around and sent back because his withholding would be voided.
Literally just making up a scenario that has not happened and doesn't exist, insisting that's what would happen. And it's just common sense. That's what would happen, of course. That we can see the future.
So
how is this something that you're certain? I mean, the man was, did a judge not order the Trump administration not to remove the guy? Like,
I think, it was under the first Trump administration. He was granted the withholding.
They almost certainly wanted to keep him in the country so they could investigate him further. Especially if he actually did have ties to MS-13, that's something that law enforcement would want to have him around to question and investigate so that they can, you know, crack down on organized crime, right? But instead, Trump just deported the dude. If the judge put an order to keep him in the country, in prison, there's probably a reason why. He probably had some value being in the country, even as a criminal.
He wasn't supposed to be removed. He got caught up in the sweep, essentially. But again, if the due process due to this man would be a hearing under withholding of deportation.
So is he receiving this due process?
No, I agree. They should do it. I actually asked the secretary, why not just send the CIS guy down?
So why don't you think they're doing it?
I think there's two potentialities. Trump, actually, it's probably more than two, but Trump doesn't want to look weak. He doesn't want to look like he's going to be pushed around by the judiciary. But I do agree with you.
Otherwise known as following the law.
No,
I was just about to interrupt and say exactly that.
Oh, not necessarily. I mean, the universal.
In this case,
no, actually, universal injunctions are unconstitutional. So there's a concern that precedent will be set by Trump adhering to universal injunctions pertaining.
It is not unconstitutional. It does not say anything about these injunctions being unconstitutional in the Constitution. In fact, Donald Trump is constantly going against the Constitution. Tim Pool, you are paid by Russia to be pro-Trump, okay? You defend him when he breaks the Constitution, and you are paid to defend him when he goes against the Constitution, and you are paid to attack the left when they defend the Constitution. You are literally paid to do this, all right? Come on.
To the Alien Enemies Act or mass deportation, and he's not going to allow that to happen. So he doesn't want to set a precedent in the future. Universal injunctions don't exist anywhere in the Constitution, and we've seen some 40% of all injunctions ever issued in this way against Trump and his administration. He's got more. I believe he has more universal injunctions in the first 4 months than all other presidents ever got individually. And that is unconstitutional. These judges.
That is not unconstitutional. That is called the balance of power in our government, right? We've got a legislative, judicial, and executive branch for a reason. They're meant to balance each other out.
Are issuing these mandates which plainly violate their constitutional authority. So the check on that is plainly Trump says, no, I'm not going to adhere to something you can't do.
Right. So this is, again, this is authoritarianism, right? It's like
authoritarian?
Well,
I agree. The judges are acting authoritarian.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he as an executive is trying.
It is authoritarian for a variety of judges to block acts taken solely by a single figure in power whom people are making merch of being the literal king. Yes. That's not authoritarian. The judges blocking him just going past courts and legal standard to get what he wants done, like, that's unconstitutional. Blocking that is unconstitutional. It's authoritarian, actually.
Trying to destroy the power of the.
Remember, guys, just the reason why Tim is saying this fundamentally is Russia's paying him. The DOJ outed him for this. Trump's now back in power. I'm sure the money from Russia is coming back again. Russia's paying him.
Other branches of government by ignoring their authority, by mounting
but they don't
aggressive legalistic defenses like the ones that you're making in order to expand the power of the presidency and be able to act with impunity. Which is part of why he's sending them. Sure. I mean, look, I'm not a legal scholar. Generally, I would have said that presidents, I think, tend to follow judicial orders more than Trump tends to. Right.
Let me ask you a question. If a judge ordered you to shoot a man in the head, would that be illegal? I'm using an extreme example on purpose.
Yeah.
It's obviously.
Yes, an extreme example that has absolutely no application to this one, because the judge has the power to order what they ordered, and they have the power and they have the right to hold that order. The president does not have the right to go past it. In fact, the people responsible for said deportation, while Trump may be immune of all crimes committed in office as deemed by the Supreme Court, I wonder why they had to do that for Trump when everything he does is so constitutional. But they might be able to go after the people responsible for completing the deportation. Many deportations the courts may be going after. Recently, a plane of immigrants was sent, I think, to South Sudan or possibly somewhere else. We don't know. And the courts are going after the people responsible for transporting said immigrants for deportation there because they can't go after Trump. Trump's breaking the law. The people he's ordering around, he's ordering to break the law. The judges are enforcing it. It is not the same as a judge ordering you to shoot someone else in the head. But once again, tricky little tactic by Tim Pool.
No, a judge can't order you to kill somebody. That's crazy. But we're not talking about a judge ordering Trump to kill anybody. We're talking about judges in, I think we're up to 87 instances, issuing universal mandates across the entire nation based on lawsuits of single individuals. So, for example, a recent one was the transgender military ban. Donald Trump issued an executive order saying, DSM-5 mental disorder, you are now going to be inadmissible from the armed forces and will be severed unless you are not showing symptoms. A judge ruled, from this point forward, the military under Trump must admit all individuals regardless of any mental disorder. the judges only have the authority over the people in their courtroom unless it's a class action lawsuit. Universal injunctions are not constitutional.
Like Brown versus Board of Ed. Like, so you when a person brings a
So the Board of
lawsuit to the
Education is
government,
country, right?
So a person brings a lawsuit to the government about to a judge or the Supreme Court about a law being unconstitutional, and like the ruling should only affect that case. It shouldn't affect
It literally
like
affects the
law.
It affects.
So this is actually, I know for a fact Tim is wrong here due to, funnily enough, a gun-related thing, and I would love if I was there right now to challenge Tim on this. It is actually very, very common for low-level judges to be able to challenge laws on a state level at least, not federal necessarily, but a state level, and to use the Constitution as a basis, funnily enough. In the case of California, a little while ago, and correct me if I'm wrong on whether or not this stuck, but a judge in California was brought a case in regards to California's strict limit on 10-round magazines for firearms. So in California, if you have magazines that can fit more than 10 rounds in them, you are essentially committing a felony. You have to limit your like, even if the gun can take or like if the gun is made to take only that amount of a magazine that can fit that many rounds, even if there isn't an alternative, I think having the gun can be something that gets you in trouble as well. California is very strict on that kind of stuff, and a lot of people have been quite, no pun intended, triggered about the magazine limits because loading mags is awful, and the less rounds you can fit in a single mag is, you want more in a single mag because then you have to load less magazines. And so this lady brought it in front of a judge to counter or to try and challenge this law, and the judge ended up ruling that based on the Second Amendment of the Constitution, a limit on the magazine capacity of firearms being enforced on a state level is just fundamentally against the constitutional rights of the state's citizens, and essentially like challenge the law in such a way where until the governor of the state themselves is able to like go to court defending it, it's basically not a law anymore, was more or less the essence of what I read. I don't know if this is still in effect right now in California, but this happened like a year ago. And so I'm pretty certain judges can absolutely overrule at least state laws, even if they're like a lower level judge. If they're a higher level judge, like a state like judge or something, like I'm pretty sure they can challenge what the president is trying to do, and it's absolutely within their constitutional right to do so.
It's the law.
Uh-huh.
So in the issue of lower courts and this universal injunction, lower courts have the authority over the singular individuals in their courtroom unless it's a class action. So they could have made it a class action. They could have sent out the letters. They could have gotten the signatures and said, we need X amount of transgender military servicemen and women because we want this to apply to all. Instead, what happened was, and I'll argue this. This is where it encroaches into the authoritarian. The judge said all means all. That's a quote. This created a huge uproar because it meant that the military now had to enlist schizophrenics. That if someone...
No. Trans people are not equivalent to schizophrenics. That's literally not even what the medical community... What standard are we going by where that would be like the recruitment rules? What? There is no medical consensus among doctors that schizophrenia and transness or gender dysphoria are on the same level, and thus if you allow trans people or gender dysphoric people into the military, you then have to also allow schizophrenic people. You just hate trans people and think of transness as a type of delusion or schizophrenia. That's why you're saying that, Mr. Paid by Russia. Never gonna let that one go. I will never let him live that one down. The fact this guy is literally a Russian paid stooge can never be forgotten, okay?
Someone showed up suffering from manic depressive disorder and they were paraplegic, they were now under this universal injunction entitled to join the military. But I mean, a schizophrenic bipolar who's suffering delusions is not going to be able to complete basic training. Now, perhaps there'd be an argument, as you're saying it, if the judge only said this day will apply.
I like how he admits, by the way, that we already have a system to filter out people not capable of being like servicemen in our military, and yet he's like, but we still need to have these laws that limit who's allowed to even enlist. It's like, okay, whatever. The reason why, by the way, is the military is actually a pretty, it's not ideal, but it's a path that many have taken to go from dirt poor to relatively stable in life. And it's an option that a lot of people take. and it's an option I think Tim Pool would rather see a lot of trans and LGBT and POC people not have as an option. Even if it's not the best option, he'd rather they not have it at all.
Just to transgender military men and women, but they didn't. It was a woman. She said it applies to everybody. So Trump said, okay, I'm not even going to defy that. We're going to appeal it. He didn't even ignore the order. They went to SCOTUS, and SCOTUS...
You think Trump even knows any of this was happening?
Probably not.
Like,
well, I mean... Like,
I don't think he's
I'd say he probably knew what's happening, but I don't think he had a hand in the day-to-day operations of it.
I mean...
For any boss.
Yeah, it's just funny that we go, oh, Trump said this, Trump said that. Trump, I mean, he certainly hates trans people, but I don't think he's like... And doesn't want them in the military, but I don't think he's like following the day-to-day of the case.
I agree.
He's like, you know, doing loopy-loops out on the golf course. But, like, the legalistic, like, points that you're making to me, it's all a fig leaf for, like, the larger thing that he's doing, which is bending the law in these bizarre ways. What is the point of like sending people to El Salvador, right? To like this prison in El Salvador. Part of the reason to send him there, to send Abrego Garcia there as quickly as possible, is it just shields him from the rest of the legal system, right? It makes it harder to get him back, right? If you send
he's El Salvadoran.
Yeah, but my point is like he's entitled.
He wasn't born in CCOT, though, Tim.
The due process as someone who's in America, right? If you shove people into this like hole in another country as quickly as possible, it gives you plausible deniability. I don't really give a shit about the various again legalistic like little nuances of the ruling. The important part to me is Trump saying, being under an order to bring the guy back and saying, I can't because the president of El Salvador, my best friend, says he won't return him, right?
How do you get him to do it?
Saying El Salvador is basically a client state of the Trump administration at this point. He'll do whatever he wants. Like Bukele will suck his dick. Like it doesn't matter.
Want something in return?
It's true.
Yeah, sure. What give him like they're friends. Yeah. So it's a fig leaf, right? It's like it's in order to the reason to do it is to just make it more difficult to do the right thing.
I suppose the issue is
I gotta say, while I do think I have a few nitpicks of like the level of aggressiveness Adam Conover's going in here with. I do feel like he's trying to go in coming off very reasonable and chill. When it comes to Tim Pool, you should go in coming off as aggressive and kind of an asshole, because there are some points you can hammer Tim on while being an asshole that are like kind of hard to look bad when you're like actually substantiating those points, like the Russia stuff and just generally like attacking the way that he argues on a meta level. Like, why are you arguing that? Like, okay, whoa, I don't care about whatever like minutia you're trying to get lost in here, or whatever anecdote you're bringing up here. What is the point of your claim? Because my point is that in America, everyone should have due process, even the most wretched criminals, because that is what makes America so great. Donald Trump is going against that. It is against the Constitution, and all of the courts and the majority of legal experts are coming out to say so. The only person who doesn't seem to agree with this idea are Trump and people who love him, that are part of his cult. Explain this to me, Tim. Like, I do wish there was a little more of that aggression, Like, that's what I would like to see more of, but, I'm going to be honest. I can't nitpick too badly. Adam Conover did pretty good from what I've seen here. I would love to watch more, but it's been 43 minutes, and we've only seen 20 minutes, so this would take I'd be up until 6 a.m. if we watch this whole debate on stream, but you can go watch it on your own time if you please, though you would be giving Tim Pool views, so maybe don't do that. I'm sure there's progressive creators who watch the whole thing, and it's like some 8-hour-long reaction if you want to check that out. But for like a basic taste, I feel like this was pretty good. I don't know if Adam ends up getting like steamrolled later on or something. That could happen. It could be the other way around. Maybe Tim gets steamrolled later on. But from what I saw, it was a pretty like Adam held his own pretty well. And as someone who doesn't necessarily have too many of the like facts of the situations Tim tries to weaponize in arguments, like he was able to like say, whoa, no, stop getting lost in the details. Let's talk about the core foundation of this actual discussion. So yeah, I gotta say, pretty good performance from Adam Conover. I'm pretty damn impressed. But yeah, with that said, if you guys enjoyed this segment, if you found it enjoyable, educational, or entertaining in any way whatsoever, then please consider leaving a like and a comment. Every thumbs up you guys leave in the forms of likes, despite it only taking a second, does mountains to help my channel in the algorithm. It really does. And if you want to compound that benefit, you can also leave a comment as well. If you don't know what to say, comment down below. Bald Man Bad, if you want to let me know you saw all the way to the end, because Tim Pool's bald. But of course, it also helps the channel a lot in the algorithm. It doesn't just tell me you watched all the way to the end. On top of that, you can also subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications so that YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload new videos in the future. And you can follow my social medias linked down below in the description. Especially my fan Discord, which is actually the main hub of my community and fan base. I host gaming events, call-in streams, and watch parties there every week, and announce all my new uploads and streams there, so even if YouTube fucks up, you'll at least know I'm active through there. And of course, finally, if you want to support me directly, financially, help me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio, then please consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buy some custom Xander Hall merchandise through the Streamlabs link down below in the description. Regardless of how you support me, though, thank you guys so much for watching. It means the world, and as always, I hope you have a good one, and I hope to see you again soon.